First of all, good evening to everyone. So the topic for our teaching tonight will be how to go about practicing loving kindness and compassion in troubling times.
Tani korig nyokta zikide kandis glazege yore zena nyokta thamchipo nga chu sim gobzo yore.
So when we talk about troubling times or a troubling environment, how should we understand this? Well, all trouble is produced by our mind.
Tani korig yakbo inda korig dugbo inde nga chu sim laraglege yore.
Whether an environment is good or bad depends on our mind.
Tani dirib nishibaga nangla tani da zambalang korig tani halebaga tani kyobo tani chakbarisi dirib nishibaga tani tolla.
In the 20th century, the world environment in general deteriorated.
Tani dirib nishibaga to dakila tani makchin tangbo niba tani rawo tang yang tani nyokta mambo shonin zambalang shi korig tani dugbo chakbarisi.
Particularly at the beginning of the 1900s with the First World War and then later with the Second World War, this had a very negative impact on the general global environment. However, in talking about the environment deteriorating, this is not the earth. This doesn't mean the earth, the world itself, is bad. It's people's minds deteriorating. Once people's minds deteriorate, then it's very easy for the external environment to deteriorate too. And so we can say that the external environment changes based on the human mind. And then once the external environment has become negative, this then has an effect once again on the human mind. And these two things in mutual interaction continually deteriorate. However, in terms of dealing with a negative or troubling situation or environment, there are different ways of approaching it. One way is a worldly way of approaching the situation. The other would be a Buddhist way of approaching it. The worldly or mundane way of approaching such negative situations, say if someone does something to harm them, then they think they should retaliate to that person. And when we go about identifying that person that did us harm, we lay the blame at the level of the person.
Tini tendrishi ti tini mi tela tini mula tini nopa shi ni tini lanjab ni kasta tendrishi na tini tindri mo yang lariang tini pansan nopa shi tendrishi ni tini nopa la nopa tang nopa tendrishi ni tini tamchibo tini kori tini jirdik chakne tini tendri rendo nduk ma to ba nopa ti tacho ni mjik zoya tini menduk.
But by laying the blame at the level of the person and by speaking back to them and retaliating, this just causes a endless cycle whereby the situation just gets worse and worse. There's no end to a situation when it's addressed like this.
Teni nangchu nangni na perna moschiga teni ta ngarang la teni nopa shiona teni nopa shinkente teni mutila ngunzeng yo mares nangchu nani.
So, according to a Buddhist approach, however, when someone does something harmful to us, we don't lay blame at the level of the person.
Teni ngaso samna teni muti resam gare ngaso muti lakpa ga ngarang la teni japsung teni muti teni khani te ngarang la teni ta kaja teni dugchak teni te shasung muti re nopa shinkente muti resam ne ngaso shetang jitembi teni sam gare.
The way that we usually think, our worldly way of thinking, is that it was that person who harmed me. It was their hand that struck me, or it was their mouth that uttered words that were offensive to me.
Tani nangchu ina ona muti maina ngarang la nopa zonkente muti lakpa main muti khamaina ona gangrezina muti semreze gores.
So, if Buddhism doesn't hold that it was the person hand who hit us or their mouth that uttered these words, if it wasn't the person doing these things, then who was it or what was it? From a Buddhist point of view, we say it was their mind.
Tani ngarang la nopa shinkente muti mare ngarang la nopa shinkente muti semnang la yopi khongcho de.
So a Buddhist perspective doesn't hold that the person doing the harm was actually the person, but rather the anger inside their mind.
Tani mati tani kha tani ngarang la tani mapashi tani ngarang la tani ta kaja dugja tani mati shadna ti mkhorang kha de la rawang yo mare se kha de rawang me pare se.
And so we would say that even though that person uttered insulting words or offending words to us, their mouth, in fact, had no freedom in this regard.
Tani mati lakpa tani ngarang la tani jabna tani mati lakpa te rawang me pares.
And that person's hand that struck me also had no freedom in doing so.
Pena ngarang tani chindo ya leni tani ndampani chila jabna.
For example, if I were to take this water and to hit someone, bottle of water, and to hit someone with it, we shouldn't be angry with the bottle of water.
The
bottle of water has no mind to cause harm to anyone. But it's true that which hit our head and made our head hurt is the bottle of water.
But even though
that which hit our head and made it hurt is the bottle of water, we shouldn't be angry towards it. What is the reason for this, do you think?
Teni ngaso simla teni marga wati jemsen kangrezena ngarang gola jabne ngarang gola teni chorwa dingmur o teni teni shong teni chorwa dingmur shong yo ti jemsen ji ngarang sem kanala teni marga wa yungu yore yenna teni te zongkhente ten deren duasen de jamkheng ngoma ngarang gola namu zongkhen ten deren du yenna di thola ngaso chomalangwi jemsen kangrez.
So it's true that in having my head hit, a feeling of suffering, of pain is produced. However, even though it was the bottle of water that caused it, it isn't the bottle of water that we should be angry with. And what is the reason then for this?
Teni ti kapsangaso teni penda mostila trawa teni Chorang gola javiatin derindua, chorang gola namuzuatin derindua, di tola chorang tromalang jimsen kari rezi, ngaso chila mosila trena, ngaso kandi lanjab karezina, on de korang ketini ningola jabamarin, the lakpa thane, mi lakpa gampamari, korang la rawa yomari, lakpa re, zenitin segres.
So if someone was to ask, well, why are you not angry with the bottle of water? After all, it was the bottle of water that struck you on the head. Then we might answer that the bottle of water had no freedom in this regard. It was the hand that used it to strike our head. It wasn't the bottle's intention.
Tani ti kapsa nga so ti jimsenji ngarang tini ngupun dela ngarang tolang game ngarang tini lakpalar. So in that
sort of situation, we would have to say that we shouldn't be angry with the bottle of water, but we should be angry with the hand that used the bottle of water to strike us. However, if we think about it a little further, we can say that also the hand has no freedom in this situation.
Lakpa tindi nga sola tini lakpa tini chendo zone nga sola thola tini jamken tindi shenken de serezana te nga so khongcho ti lakpa la tindi shet chikyo yore lakpa kwaro rawa yo mares.
So that which made our hand take the bottle of water and strike someone was our anger. It wasn't actually the hand itself that decided to do so. It didn't have any freedom in the process.
Tendi indi nga sola no pa zongkenda de ngupo nga sola mpangni nga sola jamna ngupo khorang maresi te nga so sama kelenge yore te maresi.
So for that reason, the nga
so di lakpa ga tini chide ga tini phenni jamna tini chide tini ga rawa yo mare nga so tendi se ga.
So everyone would have to say that in this instant, the water bottle had no freedom over the action.
Teni tati jimsun te karti ndriyo na karti tendi yenna zig te yenna teni nga so lakpa la yang rawa yo mare lakpa yang teni khorang ga rawa mare lakpa yang nga so khongcho langdi teni rawa me pigoni jab go yores.
And if we follow this line of reasoning, then we have to conclude too that our hand also didn't have any freedom because it didn't decide to strike anyone. It was our anger that made it do so.
Teni mukashe perna korang khongcho lang yong kapse teni rawa mene teni mula teni jab go yore jab sabi jini korang yang jopa ke yore.
And there are some people who get angry and then they strike other people. And as soon as they do so, they give rise to regret. So in that situation, the problem is not the hand, but the anger.
Teni karti khongcho la teni lakpa khoranga teni ta ngaso la jab ko yore teni ti jimsinji ngaso lakpa la teni trolanga yo zena tindi tini ta lakpa la tini ngubo mphangni ngaso ngola jab ko yore teni ngubo la trolang go re ti jimsinji bare
hungi kyek teni sulu de yap ko ma song ka ba
ta ngaso perna lakpa ti khongcho teni rama me pi go ne teni lakpa teni ngaso ngola jab ko yore rama me pare Rama me pa ina nga so tini lakpala nga so to lang yin zena.
Yeah, even though our hand didn't have any freedom over hitting someone with the bottle, if we say that we are angry with the hand,
Tendi karti te zena ti indi nga so tini che ina tini ngupo pe na do phane nga so kola jamna tini do la yang to lang go res te ina chere zena do yang tini ta Quarantine nga so lakba ga tini domphane do nga so gola jamri tini indi tini ta rawa mena yang ta nga so trolang ga yona trolang chokpa da tini jim te yinna trolang chokna tini nga so do la yang trolang gores.
If we follow this line of reasoning, then we should also then be angry with the bottle of water and similarly angry with a stone. Say, if we used a stone to strike someone, if someone struck us on the head with a stone, then we could also be angry with the stone. That is, we are going to be angry with things that caused us suffering despite them not having any freedom over the action.
However,
we don't get angry with the stone, we get angry with the brain or the mind of the person. Or rather, we don't get angry with the stone, but the person's hand who threw it. But in actual fact, we shouldn't be angry with that. We should be angry with the anger inside the person's heart.
Tani sanji chomdande tani ta page tani song ores page jayores.
And the Buddha Shakyamuni gave an analogy for this.
Pede gangrezina ngaso khela tini do jamna rewa kheyona tini khela ngaso do jamna tini kheto so tini do jamking mula tini ti jis ro mari ti do jamna do jis jikres kheto so.
So it's like if someone throws a rock or a stone at a dog, the dog doesn't chase the person, but it chases the stone or the rock.
Teni khechu teni khela teni do jab teni nyamnyong yo message te ngoni khetini reze te ta roba ga sa ta romba ga sa la khemambo yore teni khe do jab na teni ngoni khe teni do teni ro reze te sanji lo tom chani da ngab ja gong la song ta ta teni reze.
I don't know if everyone has experience of throwing rocks at dogs, but really this is how it is. It happens a lot in nomadic areas and farming areas. If you throw a stone or a rock at a dog, they really do chase after the rock. And as the Shakyamuni Buddha said it 2,500 years ago, it is exactly the same today.
Tani sangi la teni karte do jamna. Teni sangi la do jamna teni sangi teni do jis jigamare sangi do jamken te sena te koranga so kares.
But if one were to throw a stone or a rock at a lion, the lion wouldn't go after the rock, but rather go after the person who threw it.
Te sangi la do jamna teni na mana hako me ngaso sangi la do jam mamnyung yinsare sangi teni songores.
Whether or not that's what happens, it's hard to say. None of us probably have this experience, but this is how the Buddha told it. So this is the difference between how a dog and a lion reacts in this situation. So the worldly response is just the same as a dog chasing after the person, after the rock that was thrown at them. And the reason that this analogy holds is that if someone strikes us with their hand, then we are angry with that person's hand that struck us. We don't get angry with the anger actually that caused the action.
Tani nangchu tina tini ta te nopa mepa shiati counter is na sangita or is nangchu pe na mi o ta jamba sikatini ngala tani mabib kutini kaja shana te koranga khate rawa mand khate pe na do mi lagba dom pe ni tini ta don rawore koranga rawa mand tini dom penkhun ko mun rawo ta kan rezna khongcho rang rez korang khongcho de rind te indi sawang omati khongcho re tini khongcho de meba che go ndo samne nangba tini sam gre.
The Buddhist approach, on the other hand, follows that of the lion. So if someone speaks insulting words or disparaging words to us, it's not their mouth that is at fault. Their mouth that is uttering the words is not free in respect of this action. It's just like someone throwing the stone. In this situation, the hand is also not throwing the stone. It's not free in its decision to throw the stone. So what the real root of the problem is the anger behind this action. And so the Buddhist approach targets dispelling the anger at the root of the problem.
Tani tinji yindi ta nga so perna tani khongcho te tani mepa shi sona tani changma onoba shin kente tsawani tani mepa che res perna sangela kora do jam king korang mo jis tani mate tani mepa she jana tani ti jini des kola doni do jam king yo mare te dan ra boris khongcho de mepa shi sona.
If we are able to get rid of anger, then the harmful situation is completely eradicated, is completely eliminated. It's just as if in the situation of a person throwing a stone, if we were to get rid of the person throwing the stone, then the problem would be solved. So addressing the anger is going to the root of the problem.
Then draw me the logic tolatani, Tanga Yenchit. Teni da Pansan Muruk parla yenare, Jacob parla yena, Teni Chongsani Deva tang Deva parla, Teni Jabri Guni, Teni Logi Dujak, Teni Mambo, Teni Tangayan Teni Shungores.
In the course of human history, there have been many terrible conflicts, such as conflicts or wars between ethnicities, between nations, and even on the small scale between tribes.
Tani Tinjigana, the Pomambo, Shung Jimson de Garesina, Jimson de Susozina, or Narangla, the Muzambandi, Narangla, no Pachi, and the Sam, Jimson de Terres.
And the reason that so much suffering of this kind took place was because everyone always said, or everyone always says that, oh, that person did me harm.
Yana Jarkov Jambati, Natsu Jarkovla, no Pachi in the Sambandrao. Yana Murg Jambati, Natsu Murgla, no Pachi in the Sambandrao. Yana Deva Jambati, Natsu Devala, the no Pachi in the Samba. Yana Mujambati, Narala, no Pachi, the new Samlores.
Or rather, that nation is doing me harm, or that ethnicity is doing us harm, or that tribe is doing us harm, or that person is doing me harm. Ways of thinking like this.
Teni Tinjina, Atsoto, Gangina, Teni Jarkovina, Murgina, Teni Mozambayana, Gangina, Atsola, no Paking, Omati, Atso, Teni Moons and Topgoyomares.
Regardless of whether we're speaking about a nation or an ethnicity or just another person, we don't really know how to go about identifying the real agent of harm.
Teni Indio no packing omate denita Gangian Teni Hamago Magoti no packing omate, that Mepashi Matavti, then in also Nirkaps Teni Pansan Chicla, Teni no the Javigo and Ramada Shina Antony. The Jigzokita and your Marsti, Gini, Ramji Taro Mambo Younger, and Jigzokia Maris.
So, if we don't know who the agent of harm is and we don't know how to get rid of them, then with all of this conflict and fighting, there really will be no end to it.
Teni Savitsawa, the Terangaso, Teni Golgoya, the Karesina, Natsola, Nopa Zonkante, the Muti Mares, Muti Labate Mare, Muti Kamares, Teni. So
really what we do need to know, what we need most of all, is that that which is harming us is not a person or their hand or their mouth, but rather the hatred or the anger in their mind.
Ngaso Bernard, Ja Mepa Zoyans in the Tindizorios, Magdamni Naranga, Ja the Mepa Zoyans in the Tindizorios in Matanchichi. The Ninguni, Choranga Jati Mepa Zona, Jati, Muzambati, Lakpa Mare, Lakbati Choranga Jamare, Muzambati Kadi, Choranga Jamare, Choranga Jati, Muzambati, Simganala Yupi, Kunchoti, Choranga Janguni Teres. Then Mepa Zona, the Mepa Zogores.
So when we speak about destroying our enemies, going into battle and destroying our enemies, well, our enemies are not the hands of another person or the mouth of the other person, but rather the anger in their mind. And so if we are going to destroy our proper enemy, then we should be set on destroying that.
Tani koranga khungcho de tani mepa zo jana tani ngone tani chorala drastic jam mepa chaktsararis.
And if you are able to go about destroying that anger, then you will be in a situation with no enemies whatsoever.
Tani mizal ge jella yo pi khungcho mepa te zona tani tini chorang jarka ngune tani tini thopkres.
Ti anja sona jabaka bo.
Mo jamba so semga nala yo pi khungcho ti chorang ga mepa shi jana ti panchuni tani chorang la no pa shinge mo chigyang yo mari tani chorang ngune tani jarka Jarka tunji toga jarka ngumati topares.
So if you really are able to destroy the anger in others' minds, then there will be no one able to harm you, and you can be considered to have really achieved victory.
Teni te nangba sanji ba ga teni thapchot jil grace.
So that is the Buddhist way of battle.
Teni nangba sanji ba ga mulan thapchot chig mares.
And in Buddhism, we don't wage battle against the person.
Mi thola mag jab ga mares.
We don't wage war against the person.
Mi sem ga na la bi khongcho thola mag jab kare.
We wage war against the anger or affliction in another's mind.
Teni mi sem ga na la bi khongcho te ngarang ga da yin zini teni zegre. Mo te ngarang ga da man mi sem nang la bi khongcho te ngarang ga da yin zini teni zegre se nang ba ga.
And what we say in Buddhism is that the anger in another's mind is my enemy, not the person. The person is not the enemy.
Teni khongcho te teni nge me pa che go yo mo jang ga jel la yo bi khongcho te ngarang ga me pa che ga yin zini teni zegre ma to ba mo te ngarang ga me pa che yin teni zeg mares.
So what we say is we talk about needing to destroy the anger in others' minds, in the anger in others' mind streams. We don't talk about destroying or getting rid of the person.
Teni nga son jiktim ba ga na mo jang bi jel la yo bi khongcho te ngarang ga da yin zeg mare mo te ngarang ga da yin zeg re nga son jiktim ba.
However, the worldly approach is to say not that the anger in another's mind is our enemy, but that person is our enemy.
Teni khongcho te mati khongcho te lang nge thap ge yen khongcho te nge me pa zo yen teni zeg mare mati ngarang ga me pa zo yen zini teni zeg res.
And rather than saying or undertaking to get rid of the anger in another person's mind, the worldly approach is to undertake to get rid of the person.
Teni karte mate me pa zona masti me pa zona tele mang mo te jat jemang de res tele mang zia masti me pa zona teni maksam moje teni yang khorang ga jarin res.
However, in getting rid of the person, then you still more enemies arise. 3, 4 more enemies arise.
Teni murg chik teni khorang ga jain zine me pa zona teni murg sam murg je murg nga khorang ga jarin res.
And if one people or ethnicity says that it is going to get rid of another, then it incurs more ethnicities or peoples as its enemy.
Teni samlo tangsir tendi goni samlo tana teni mojamba ti so khorang la yang tendi sam gore khorang te khorang ga ngaso la no pa jong de khorang ngaso da in samne khorang la tendi sam gore se mojamba cho.
And with this way of thinking proliferating, then more people come to think like this, thinking that, oh, this person is harming us, this people is harming us, they're our enemies.
Teni thama khorang ya teni mojamba cho me ba zo res.
And in the end, they then undertake to get rid of other people.
Teni khorang mojamba cho me ba zo jana teni mojamba te so yang teni mojamba te so la yang ja jemang ren res.
And then when they get rid of one person, then more people on their side become enemies.
Teni reni teni zambolang chik ti teni ta jawi go res teni logi ko thola yang shong res zambolang chik ti pansan jari ni teni jawi go res.
And then when this pattern continues, then we reach a situation where the whole world is enemies with each other, and this has happened in human history. This is the ultimate negative outcome of this kind of approach. So the final outcome is that everyone is enemies with each other, and the whole world is enemies with each other. So that is the ultimate outcome of the worldly approach to destroying enemies. In actual fact, it only leads to our enemies multiplying. It doesn't lead to lessening or reducing them.
teni tab ka yenzini nangchu teni zikres.
The Buddhist approach is to say the anger in that person's mind is my enemy, and that is what I need to destroy and battle against.
Tani tan zambolanga mutsoina teni mukoranga teni mepazoin koranga drati mutere nge mepazoin zi di tonde tani roso mambo tang korigla tola mambo tang teni sonchan jamra teni mambo zoyores.
But the worldly approach of identifying the enemy in the person has led to a huge amount of expenditure in the world, destruction of the environment, invention of all kinds of weapons.
Teni tindiga samlola teni doctrine kun soncha mambo zone ngaranso sakola sawani mepa thang mambo ko warto zoya ga tindiga zorgona zo thabyata zo ndang tela pesho shi ke ndang ni pa ga tindiga soncha zo tsarwa resi tata.
And so nuclear weapons have been invented that have been already invented that have the potential to destroy the world many times over.
Tani ti lasar tadang ti samlo tangsar taga tani zambolala nyokda chemang la tongo yores.
And this approach and this kind of technology is only causing more trouble in the world.
Tani chikshina tani lo nishisimchi jila tani zambolala tsawani mjik zogya tsawani mepa ga tani nyokda yung chigare yongji ga tani nyingka yores.
And it's possible that in the next 20 or 30 years that the world may meet its demise.
Tani da nga so nangchu yena tani nga so mu jamba muti ngaranga jaman muti khungcho de ngaranga dain zin tindi ze tani khungcho de mar mepa chiala tani gariche yorim choncha mareze gongri gariche na mi jamba tani khungcho mepa zoyati shamdang nyarji inze yores.
So the Buddhist approach is not to identify the person as the enemy, but rather the anger in their minds as the enemy. And it is that which Buddhists undertake to eliminate. But the way that they undertake to do this is not by using weapons, but rather by means of loving kindness and compassion.
Tani namba sanji pa doctrine son shade kan rezina shamdang nyarji ni kares.
If we ask what are the nuclear weapons of Buddhism, then they are loving kindness and compassion.
Shamdang nyarji ni ka ga tani zambolala pi ratsama mepa chegen tani ze yores.
And so Buddhists say to use the nuclear weapons of loving kindness and compassion to dispel all of the enemies in the world.
Tani te korang so choncha yoda meda te teres.
So as to whether Buddhism has weapons, these are them.
Tani sanji shakya thapa tani lo chikwarta tani ta sanji hngond tani lo chikwarta tani kable mambo jamne gom jamne nyamlin shini tani nang yore.
Prior to the Buddha reaching enlightenment, he spent 10 years of undergoing great hardships.
Tani lo chik jila tani korang tani jagar dorji danla tani korang sanji bares.
Drukrupa.
Lo chik jisa.
Was rather 6 years, and then 6 years later he went to Dorjiden in India.
Dorji zina te.
Bodh Gaya. Went to Bodh Gaya and achieved enlightenment.
Tani ti kapsa tani sang jevi kapsa tani sang je korang la tani nopa shinkang tani mambo yone tani korang tani sang jeva tela tani parchet jamta mambo zoyores.
And when he achieved enlightenment, or at that time, many people came to him to create all kinds of obstacles.
Tani parchet zovi kapsa tani mut so tani ti sangje shakja tapa thola tani mda tani mambo phang tani shiyor choncha mda phang yores mda.
And these people fired many arrows at him.
Tani mdam pimpi kapsana ti mo khorang cho tani ti mo jamba ta so khorang cho lagba nana yoti tani mda rang res mda res choncha res.
So the arrows that or the weapons that these people had in their hands were real bows and arrows.
Tani sanji shakja tapa tani thola thundi tani ti kapsa tani mda marim choncha mare sama metok res.
However, when they landed on the Buddha, they didn't strike him as arrows, but they as flowers.
Teni ti tondak tela nangdung yores.
And this has great meaning.
Ti nangdung chung chung yores.
It has symbolic meaning.
Pe na mo jamba cho ti nangdung karim chung yores na mo jamba cho teni ngacho la teni khongcho shi no pa shi na teni karti ngacho teni shamdang nyarji ge teni khorang la phar teni lan te channas.
And the meaning is, if others treat us with anger or in a harmful way, but we respond with loving kindness and compassion,
Teni jamba cho teni ngacho la teni no pa chik te shi thap ko mare ya teni ge tondak res.
then none of others' actions is able to harm us. This is the meaning of this incident.
Teni jamba ndam hana ya teni sarje ge teni kli ge thola thondi metok yembi gimsenti teni jamba khongcho lang ne sarje shaja thapala khongcho lang na sarje shaja tipi khorang chola shamda nyarji gomba ma tok ba khongcho lang ge yo mare teni inna shamda nyarji ge thoni teni phar teni lan teni shina teni nda tam choncha ina teni metok ndra boren ro reze niba yo mare no pa ke ge mare teni ge tondak re.
So this story of the arrows that were fired landing on the Buddha as flowers shows that if we respond to others' anger, as the Buddha did in this situation with loving kindness and compassion, then these various weapons cease to be of any harm.
Teni tindi indi nga so khori nyota jand teni ngeri kapse nga so shamdang nyarji ta labar de gores.
And particularly when we find ourselves in an environment or a situation that is particularly problematic or troubling, then we need loving kindness and compassion all the more.
Teni khori nyota jan imbi kapse teni ti sham nyarji yo na teni shamdang nyarji ge teni mi jamba ge teni sem ge na la pi khongcho ngoma de me pa shegres.
And by possessing loving and kindness and compassion in a troubling situation, then it's possible to make the anger in other, or to eliminate the anger in others' minds.
Teni te nangba sangi ba ge teni rupi jonglik res.
So this is a basic theory in Buddhism, of Buddhism.
Teni ti rupi jonglik te nga cho mo namji teni nguyo kon choa na la teni nga cho lamsang teni dembara tu shi thap gres.
But this theory or this principle from Buddhism is one that we are able to immediately verify for ourselves in our everyday lives.
Teni pe na mi jamba chi ge teni te khorang la teni no pa shi pi kaps teni khorang ge teni mo jamba te la para no pa mo shi par machat teni par teni khorang la teni phamba teni yakpo teni shi phamba te nga chu teni sem ko tang ni teni phamba teni shi na teni mi jamba ti khongcho te lamsang me pa chak was.
If someone is acting in a harmful way to us, but in addition to not retaliating in a harmful way, we respond with altruism from the depths of our heart, then immediately that person's anger will be dissipated.
Teni khorang ko khongcho te teni ta me pa shi charti teni muti me pa shi go mares.
And once their anger has been destroyed, there's no need to destroy the person.
Teni mi khorang ko khobang na la bi khongcho te me pa chi ni muti teni nga cho tokbo pe yakbo chang ro res chushina.
And it's possible that after the anger in the person has been destroyed, that the person in question may in fact even become a good friend.
Teni muti teni maung bala nga cho la no pa ma shi par machat te nga cho la phamba drumkhin teni jen ro res.
And it's also possible that not only that this person might not only not do harm to us in the future, but also might act in a beneficial way towards us.
Teni nga cho ji ting ko thola teni par teni phamba drumna shamdang nyang ji che na teni te ha mo kong khen teni go mo khtumuk chan teni lumbo par teni phamba drumna sarya tarong yang mamthane no pa king khen teni yor rete yin te nyong shu res.
Of course, there are people who, when we respond to them with loving kindness and compassion and great altruism, are extremely ignorant and foolish and continue to harm us. There are people like this. However, they really are only in the a small minority.
Teni mang chi shu de pena nga su pala teni no pa ki na teni khorang ga khaji ni me sim ka tang ni teni o teni khorang la no pa shin kan te la teni sham dang nyar ji shi saksam nam tok shi teni shi jana teni me par po teni no pa shin kan ka te khorang la sim gar teni langsang sim gar them ro re se mi mang chi shu teni ris.
The vast majority of people, when someone responds to their actions of harm with loving kindness and really sincere altruism, find themselves very moved. Most people are like this.
Teni tinti na nga so teni pena khori tinti nyokta jan tinti zik nang la teni mo khashi tinti ta samlo tinti yak pon cham nyar ji shi tham khen yo na.
Within a troubling environment, if a few people are able to practice loving kindness and compassion, then the trouble will decrease.
Mujiti, Mujirib Jirega, the Nisham Yanjita, the Nishini, the Nishin Kenzina, the Nikoto Korikanani, Nyoda the Jechonland.
Let's just say that there were 200 people fighting, 100 people on each side, and just 10 people on either side practiced loving kindness and compassion, then their conflict would be able to be significantly reduced.
Then Manchishu, Denida. The samlo the tinti shamyanji tinti resona teni ta nyokta de chong ma to meba chakres.
And when the majority of people become able to practice loving kindness and compassion, then the problem or the trouble in question becomes or reduces to only a very small scope.
Tini mo nibyapo the tamchik semla teni tinti reson shamyanji tinti resona teni khocho go teni nyokta de zawani meba chakres.
And if all of the people in this situation, all 200 people of them, were to practice loving kindness and compassion, then the problem or the trouble in question would be completely eliminated.
Teni ti kapsa nga chu teni choncha nda da manda da tsu chama teni ta cholok ma to di chi yo mare go guba yo mare ti kapsa. Peshut tangsa yo mare.
And in this situation, there's no need for weapons whatsoever. There's no use for them. They're just a complete waste. In the world, there's a lot of talk about the need to control nuclear weapons. However, it is not possible to control them.
Teni zambolang ka thola yo pitini choncha to chama teni besho tanga mepa tondak chiya mepa gumit shirgona teni mchama sem gana la shamnya ji yo sona te khoso mepa gumit je gare kho besho mepa chakres.
In order to reach a situation where there is no need, no use for nuclear weapons whatsoever in the world, this would happen if we had a situation where everyone were able to practice loving kindness and compassion.
The
strange thing is, though, that even though this is the case, no one really gives this any serious thought.
In any case,
this is the way that the Buddhist way of battle. And we also say in Buddhism that we don't struggle or battle against another person, but rather battle against ourselves.
뭐장 그 컨트롤한 탑수시고 그래서
If we absolutely necessarily must go into battle against another, then it is the anger in that person's mind that we battle against.
물란 탑수시나 돈다요 말에 가서다리 공라샤바다 페나 춘드더니 저거더니 판에 가서 온고라 잡나 더니 춘데란 탑수시바다 징바레스
There's no meaning whatsoever in battling against the person. It's just as we talked about before. There's no meaning whatsoever in getting angry with the bottle of water that strikes us on the head.
든디인디 당가서 코리 띵욕자 든디 강나요나 코리 욕자 요사텔라 가서 샴다냐지텔 탁버 고요레
In any case, whatever troubling situation we might find ourselves in, we especially need loving kindness and compassion.
다 든디인디 가서더니 페나 잠볼랑가 드니 타데저 자컵 소소 드니 타 잠메 파조야 치테더니 촌차 망보더니 조요레스
But despite this, all the various nations around the world, in order to destroy their enemies, invent all kinds of weapons.
드니 촌차더니 조사거더니 단 조잡에 망보요레스
And there are many different factories and facilities for manufacturing these weapons.
드니 락서 할레바 망보 잠라 망보요레스
And many technologies and means for producing them.
드니 남바 상지 바거더니 촌차디 샴당냐지인디 드니 남바 상지 바음 촌차 조야데 가레제나 샴냐지랑 그젤라 메나 금 고레스
But insofar as Buddhism is concerned, the Buddhist weapons are loving kindness and compassion. And if one doesn't have these in one's mind stream, then the way to go about producing them is through meditation.
드니 남바 상지 바페나 드니 금 잡사가 드니 페나타 드니 잡고 드니 추캉 잡고 옛난자 양나 곰바 옛난자 양나 롭자 옛난자 샴당냐지 드니 곰사가 드니 드니가 다 사자 롭자 드니 곰바 드니 망보요레스
And there are many Buddhist spaces for the practice of meditation, temples or centers such as this, monasteries, schools.
더소 삼마 남바 상지 바거더니 촌차 조사거더니 트스 다린디 조자레스
These are all the factories for manufacturing the weapons of Buddhism.
든디 인디 드니 가서 뭐 창마거더니 나출라더니 랍나 드니 다 다린디 직 드니 뭐 랑라더니 탑수시 고레스 랑리 자칼롱 고레스
The Yanjasuna Jigrabakabula.
가서 남바 상지 바라 추냠린 제나 드니 담보 랑라 탑수시 고레스
So if we are a practitioner of the Buddha Dharma, then firstly we need to struggle or battle against ourselves.
드니 랑당 탑니 랑레 드니 자카 톱소나 드니 다 자카 응문이 장네 데레스
And once we gain victory against or vis-a-vis ourselves, or this in fact is the real victory.
드니 잔란 탑니 잔지 콩초당 탑고레 잔지 콩초당 탑니 잔지 콩초데 메바조 탑나 드니 데 잔당 탑이 자카 응마데 데레스
And if we are able to destroy the anger or the affliction in the minds of others, then this is the true victory in going back into battle against the other.
따티 연치팅 가서 코리 녀자장가 나라테니 냥지 고서그 짐슨 레스
So that is the reason why we should cultivate compassion or practice compassion and loving kindness in troubling situations.
드니 티톨랑아서 삼로지 모 땅고레스
And in respect of these things, we really need to think very carefully.
즈모 땅나테니 페랑아서 문용슈 지거데니다 드니 페나 드니 냠린 제나 문용슈 냠린티 당아서 잠볼랑 라시집 거드니 게르와드니 땅고나 페카블레 카보레 땅 탑고나 페카보레스
If only a minority of people are practicing in this way, then in order to effect a change in the world at large is rather difficult.
옛날 소소 머치라 드니 게르주 양답바드니 잡탑거레스
However, it's possible for one to make a very great change at the level of one's individual life.
드니 랑거 초알라 드니 게르주 잡탑거레스
and one's everyday life, one's lifestyle is able to be changed.
Teni sosorang ka teni khori chungchung ti nangla teni gerchu japthap kores.
And it's possible for change to be made at a small scale level in the broader environment.
Teni ti kapsa teni ngasola chokbo mangbo yone teni ta mangbo teni yonan mangbo go nyamrup na teni khori chimbo layang teni gerwa teni she thap kores.
And if we have many friends, teni chokbo mangbo yone teni dijis.
Teni chokbo mangbo ngaso tsama go nyamrup na shawa te nyamda dribna teni khori chimbo layang.
And if we have many friends who collaborate with us in this endeavor, then we're able to make an impact on a larger environment. So we need to find a way for getting more friends.
Oh yeah, that teni indi ti anchita ngaso teni nangbasan jipa dan tabligres.
So what I have just talked about is the Buddhist way of battle.
Teni ti otong gaso ona teni shamdang nyarji zena kari rezi namba sanji ba de chun chon cha te kangris rezi na te ngoto che res.
And as to what the Buddhist weapons are, loving kindness and compassion, I'd like to share some thoughts about this now.
Teni namba sanji ba teni shamdang nyarji ziba teni ka jigla teni chadmit jiba teni ge yige ni tola nungo yores nyarji chadmit shamba chadmit teni ze yores.
So in Buddhism, after the words loving kindness and compassion, we add the word immeasurable. Usually we talk about there being 4 immeasurables. In addition to the immeasurables of loving kindness and compassion, there is also the immeasurable of sympathetic joy and the immeasurable of equality.
Teni te tambo kan rezina ngaso shamba zia te kan nyarji zia te kan rezila zina ngaso susu rang sim ka tani teni te khazam ta teni zi maimba ngune tane sim ka tani ta simjin chama ngaso meyin nanja teni chokchang na simjin chama te teni dungur chigyang meba dungur chembo dungur chongchong teni chigyang meba teni renro go re sona samni teni sem ka tang rewa japa molum japa sem ka tang ndopa tini tela tani kare zegrezena nyangji zegres.
So when we talk about the first of these immeasurables, the immeasurable of compassion, this refers to the really deep and heartfelt wish or hope or prayer or desire, not just saying it in words, but really from the depths of our heart for all beings, human and animal, to be free from every suffering, whether it's just a small suffering or big suffering.
Tani shamba zeyate kangrezena shamba zeyate yang ta dungmer mepa cham chik machat par tani simchan chama la dewa yo pa ta nga cho me nare tenrao tani chokchak ina kang ina tani chama la tani ta dewa tang dan na samba ro simkhung ko tang ne tani tini ta dewa tang dan sona samni tini samba te la tani shamba zegres.
And in talking about loving kindness, we refer to the wish that not only that beings not suffer, but that all beings, human, animal, of whatever kind, achieve, possess happiness.
Tani ti ola tani gawa tani sam message gawa ji de kan rezena ti ngaso perna mo jamba la tani dewa tang chepan raw tani chongzu yopa tani thong na tani sim ko tani gani ta pe yak po song khorang la dewa yak pon du khorang la tani deche tang damba rendu samni so rang la deche yo pan raw tani sim na la gawa yongwa tela tani gawa zegres.
And when we talk about the immeasurable of sympathetic joy, we refer to when we see happiness or joy experienced by another person, we refer to the response in our own hearts, really from the bottom of our hearts, of happiness and joy in another's good situation, a feeling, oh, that's great, that's wonderful. And so another joy in another's happiness produces a joy in one's own mind.
Tani ti ola tani tangyum re tani tangyum inna ti tangyum zya tin ramnyum chama ramnyum imbi ti ton res.
And after that, we have the immeasurable of equality, which refers to the equalness or the equality between beings.
Tani shirtang aso tani nangchu nala sham nyangji gawa tangyong je korang gorum de tani rize aso gorum gawang de shina tangbo shamba tani nyangji o tani gawa tani tangyong je ni tani shakiyores.
Usually in Buddhism, when we talk about the sequence of these four immeasurables, we usually say the first is loving kindness, the second is compassion, the third is sympathetic joy, and then the fourth is equality.
Teni yinang teni ngaso nyamlin shipi kapsa teni tangbo tangyum on ramnyum gomgo yores nyamlin ka kapsa.
However, when we practice on the four immeasurables, when we practice to cultivate them, then we start with the cultivation of equality.
Teni tsamalan ramnyum go goni teni ta shamba da nyangji yo go res.
And we meditate on the wish that all beings equally receive loving kindness and compassion.
Penangarang mutsola teni shamda nyangji sheyen teni tendro sola teni sham nyangji sheyen manzena teni ramnyum mayim pares.
If, for example, we say, oh, well, we'll exercise loving kindness and compassion to humans, but not to animals, then this is not equality.
Teni mi nane teni ngaso teni mi kashila ngaranga teni shamnya ji sheyen kashila sheyen man teni teni ya shena teni yang ten ramnyum mayim pares.
And among humans, if we say, oh, well, I'll exercise loving kindness and compassion to a few kinds of humans, but not to others, then this similarly is not equal or equality.
Teni yendi teni pena nangchu teni ta pena nyarji tsamen rawo yenna teni mi tsama dungar tang tarna samni teni samgo yores.
And the reason for this is in Buddhism, when we speak of, say, the immeasurable of compassion, then this is the wish that all beings without exception be free from suffering.
And
then there's no distinction entailed between people. Everyone is exactly the same in this regard. It's only through aspiring that all people, white, black, yellow, be So it's only in wishing. It's only in wishing through our practice that all people, white, black, yellow, be free from suffering. All people that we can be considered to be practicing in an immeasurable way.
Teni pena chulu tapa wanda shina nang chula tapa shinken teni ishi la tapa shinken teni kashi chulu la tapa shinken yana tapa tsavane menken ga teni pena teni lamik nguso rawo teni ga yana tsama lan ramim go gone teni dungar mena teni samgo res.
So with this practice, we need to aspire, we need to wish that all people be free from suffering, whether it be people with faith, with Buddhist faith, Christians, people with other religious faiths, people atheists with no faith at all. We need to meditate in an equal way.
Teni tema to pa perna nangbala tapa shinken tela teni shamnya je gumgo jambala marin teni tsawane zega yo mari teni zena teni korang nyar je teni o ta chama changwa chamme pa mayim ba shori teni je kres.
if we were to say, well, I'll cultivate compassion towards Buddhists, but not towards people of other religious faiths, then this compassion would be incomplete. It would be partial. It would be one-sided.
Teni sadmit te ti tonda grezi teni ta 참말라 teni ramnyum gugoni shamnyang je ma to teni nga cho chatang je ba teni khashila teni shamnyang je khashila maim ba teni shogri maim be 참말라 ramnyum mami 참마 ta chokchang 참말라 gombi jimchen ji teni nang chugo na chadme teni teni zego ares.
So this is the reason that we speak of immeasurables. This is because we meditate on all beings as equal objects of our compassion. We don't limit our compassion or confine it to just a few people in a one-sided way. It's because of our meditation on all beings equally as objects of our compassion that we speak of the immeasurable of compassion.
Tendri indi tangbo nga so nyamlim shi pikapsa teni sadme vjogna teni tangyum sadme te nyamse lengare tangbo nyamlim chi go jimsen te sama tangbo ramnyum gtawa o te yang takba yor go re so ne nangba te zegres.
So that's why in our practice on the four immeasurables, we say to begin with the cultivation of the immeasurable of equality, because it is important for us to establish this correct view to begin with.
Teni ti thola shir nga so roa mo tang teni simchen chama ramnyum ba machat teni ti thola rang dang janni ka teni ramnyum go res.
So in addition to, or not only do we require seeing humans and the tambo deni mu deni tamje deni ramyan gogres deni.
Tosochat sartreta te machat rang dang janni kan ramnyum go res.
Yeah. And in addition to this, we also require equality between oneself and other. And in fact, equality between self and other is the very root of practice.
And in
fact, all of our trouble of a large scale and a small scale, comes from the fact that we are not able to regard self and other as truly equal. So when we wish really sincerely that all beings be happy, whether humans or animals, then this is what we refer to as the immeasurable of loving kindness.
But
usually our way of thinking is in conflict with this.
What
most people tend to think is that I should be happy, I should have happiness. And similarly think that I should be free from suffering, I should be without suffering. And most people only think very seldomly about others being free from suffering or others possessing happiness. But when everyone becomes habituated to thinking like this, me, you, everyone, then our trouble only multiplies.
Perna nga so pe jangna tini khangban dinangla tini nga so changman tini mamang bozung de yona tini charwa ba bi kapsu tini khangban dinangla to changmala tini charwa zaktik yone tini ndi shok chigla tini kambo yone tini zaktik mayong wa tini yonas.
Let's just say that it was raining very hard and the room leaked and there was only one small patch that was dry.
Tani karti torgong ngaso saman dinani tinita nyer dinani nyal goni yenas.
And let's just say that tonight we all had to sleep in this room.
Tani matsama ngarang demoyengo samba mato jalla tini samlo mata ni matsama yoni dinala ngarang nyer gozi terjagres.
Everyone only thinking about their own wellness would rush to this dry spot and say that they need it.
Tani titoni tani jabri gores.
And in order to monopolize this spot, would fight each other.
Tani ganstar tani ngatsun dinala sakambo zaktak mayong sa mokchig nya sa makto yo mares.
However, there's only enough room for one person to sleep on this dry spot.
Tani chigboti nala ta ngatsun mo chama ngarang dinala nyer goze yore te tabshi yo mare mamambo tani nyasa yo mares.
But with everybody saying that they should be the one to sleep on the dry spot, there's nothing that can be done.
Tani ta ngatsu tin thola jabri gojires.
So because of this, we all have to fight.
Tani zambolong thongkhong changma tinri rinro yore changma ngarang ge yakbo pesho tanggo yakshu de ngarang la goze tani ti thoni tani nyokta yong yore.
And this is the way that it's heading with the world's resources, with everybody saying that I need to use this, I need to use the best resources, and coming into conflict.
Tani indi ta ngatsu namjin tani ta di tsuwa nangla tani shamdang nyarji gomsir nyamling ka thola gomsir tani samlok tangsar tab di boz ngotru shek yens.
So I'd like now to share with everyone a simple loving kindness and compassion meditation or cultivation method that we can use in our everyday lives.
Tani nam ngatsu mo susu mo gir mo sadang se na rang susu sem ka nangla tani ngarang ka mo jan bayena chokchak jan bayena tani zila tani no pa che go ndu samban raw tani ka samlo che yong wi kapsis.
So whenever you give rise to a thought in your mind of harming another person or another animal,
ta no pa ki zena country zena ngarang chit mo jala no pa ki go tani de ju samji mari ta perna ta ju simjeng ka chokja ne ngarang shaza go samban raw yin nan ja yang man na de ne ngarang malang gorkot tang go samban raw yin nan ja ta tindi ga tani le ka mambo yori te kangta tindi zu ka thoni dorna tab de bo shini shana nga so mo janla yana chokchak janla no pa yo ya tindi le ka ngarang ga le go samba nam tok te sem ka na la kiwi kapsus.
So in talking about harming another, I'm talking about the not necessarily the explicit intentional thought of I am going to harm another, but it could be anything like the thought to kill another being, to eat it, or to deceive another being to acquire benefit. Or in a nutshell, whenever we give rise to the thought in our mind of harming another being in some way. When this happens, we need to think in a particular way. And this this way of thinking that we need to apply is that of equality between self and other. So the first thing we need to think is that we shouldn't undertake this action, because if we do, it will harm another.
Jambala no pa yo ya tindi le kalena te janla yang tindi dungur yung gore tindu kemudu ngarang la dungur yung jitu njuk mena mu janla dungur yung ate njuk mare samni tindi samlo tang kondu.
So, and then we should think to ourselves that if we do harm this person, if we undertake the action that would harm them, then we might not come to any great suffering ourselves, but we will cause suffering to another being, and this is not okay. This is not okay that we be without suffering, but another being suffering because of our action.
Tang ngarang ke tini dengmer ndok yo mare ngarang la mi jamba tini dengmer te zi yong ati le kale ngarang control lang ne tani semna la ma ki pa yong tini dengmer mambo yong yo re te dang japo tini ngi jamba la tini dengmer yong ya no pa ki ya le kale na khong la yong tini yong re o tini indi ngarang le kan de le nyang ke mendu samne tini sam lo tang go re.
So we should think to ourselves that we don't generally like suffering. We don't want suffering. When other people do things to us, we feel great suffering. If we do something to them, they will sustain suffering. And so therefore it's not okay for us to undertake this action. And if we are able to think like this, accustom ourselves to thinking in this way, then all of the trouble in society will disappear. And the trouble within our lives will also disappear. The feeling that we are worthless, or the individual feelings of inferiority, are becoming very widespread. So we should however, from the point that we are able to accustom ourselves to this way of thinking, of thinking about the suffering that another will have if we perform a particular harmful action, then from the point that we are able to accustom ourselves to this way of thinking, then we will really be able to discover the worth and meaning in our individual lives. In the Buddhist teachings, there are many different methods, meditation methods for cultivating loving kindness and compassion. But today, because of time constraints, I'm not going to introduce these to you. If anyone has an interest in learning about these methods, then you can study them in your own time. ngarang la tini jamba tini china ngarang dungmer mambo tini yong ko dung ngarang tin do ko mendwa ngarang tini ma jamba nga tini china ngarang do ko mendwa tini ne jamba la tini china ta ko so lan do ko mare ko so la dungmer mambo yong gore tini yindi tin ngarang la dungmer yong ma chokna jamba la yo choko mare samni tini ko samlo ta o tang ro jizi til pe le labo shadna le labo reze te jub gona te za kabore ta yina ta te karchim bore. So what my hope is in this teaching tonight is that everyone is able to practice this way of thinking. Whenever that thought of harming another being arises in your mind, to think, I wouldn't like to suffer in this way. If someone did the same thing to me, I would suffer. I wouldn't want this. If I don't want to suffer, then how can it be that I would will another being to suffer? So doing this action is not justifiable. So this approach or this way of thinking is easy to say, but more difficult to put into practice. Nevertheless, it's extremely important.
Dini te terang ngaso dini chatruk nangdon te laglen la de ndebya tab depo goni laglen la depsrient.
And so there's a really this is a really convenient way of implementing this in everyday practice.
Dini ngaso terang ga chatrut dini jigzok song sama yak bonyan song tiji chije.
That's the conclusion of our teaching tonight. Thank you everyone for listening so well.
Ya dini tiji chi ngaso chatrut dang zwa dang sama jigzok song dini ngaso huwa zhe ge.
So thank you very much for everybody for listening, and we're going to end tonight with a dedication of merit.
Sonam de damja zamba nya domne ni be dana ba je ja ti ga na je wa long de ba zhe bim zo len zhou a zhou er shu om a hong ban zhen ge zhe ba ma se de hong om a hong ban zhen ge zhe ba ma se de hong om a hong ban zhen ge zhe ba ma se